In the history of bodybuilding, there has never been a person to come in and win the Mr. Olympia on their first attempt. However, there have been numerous guys to come in and do very, very well at their open debut, actually place as high as second. I'm Christian, and in this video, we will be taking a look at 5 of the best Mr. Olympia debuts in bodybuilding history. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Nick Walker is currently one of the most popular bodybuilders in our sport, but it's definitely for a very good reason. Nick Walker was able to place 5th in his first Mr. Olympia, and to a lot of people that was arguable, he could have placed as high as 4th. Nick's current trajectory is just constantly going up, and everything he says he's going to do, he's done it so far, except win the Mr. Olympia, which could be happening this year. In all honesty, anything is possible. Nick Walker got his first pro win in his true first season as a pro. Nick Walker turned pro and did the Chicago Pro about 6 weeks later, so a lot of people don't really count that as his pro debut, for say, because he was really still an amateur at the time. So he won the New York Pro, which is considered the 3rd biggest show in bodybuilding, in his first true pro season. This one we will first see, I guess, the mutant be born. And once we seen Nick here, you could definitely see his potential and how much he can grow. This was one of Nick's best packages to date. Initially going into the 2021 Arnold Classic, Nick Walker's name was not on the competitors list. Nick possibly hopped into the show due to Sergio Oliva Jr., stating that all the shows earlier in the year was pretty weak. So Nick was actually a surprise entry into this Arnold Classic. This was probably the best version of Nick Walker we've ever seen so far. Hopefully we get to see a better version this year. But in Nick Walker's first season, he was able to win the 2nd and 3rd biggest shows in bodybuilding and place 5th in his Olympia debut. Now let's go back in time a little bit to 1991, where we would have a very young Dorian Yates competing in his first Olympia competition. Dorian said he started training in 1983, and as you guys know, Lee Haney started his reign in about 1984, I believe. Should be correct. But Dorian Yates pretty much looked up to Lee Haney his whole career, and in his first Olympia, he actually had to go up against him. So Dorian Yates' Olympia debut, he placed 2nd to Lee Haney in 1991. And it's also worth mentioning that Dorian won the Night of Champions in 1991 as well. So this guy was pretty much the talk of bodybuilding that year. Now, a lot of people said that Lee Haney somewhat saw the writing on the wall. He felt like Dorian Yates was going to come in and potentially challenge him and beat him. And we seen what Dorian Yates ended up becoming, so who knows. But Lee Haney was one of the most genetically gifted bodybuilders of all time. And a lot of people actually said that this was actually the best version of Lee Haney at his last Mr. Olympia. And he retired pretty early. I believe Lee Haney was actually only about 31 years old. But Lee Haney was starting to come into, the modern era of drugs, GH, all of that type of stuff. So could Lee Haney potentially have developed and, won even more Mr. Olympias? But this isn't about Lee Haney. Dorian Yates came into his first Olympia contest and placed 2nd, man, the shadow. Incredible. Dorian Yates will go on to win 6 Mr. Olympia titles prior to Ronnie Coleman taking the reign and winning 8, of course. Dorian was probably best known for his conditioning, arguably has the best back of all time. And also, Dorian was a very hard worker, known as the Shadow. He was over in the UK, working in the dark, while everyone was over here in LA, in Gold's Gym having a lot of fun. And a quote Dorian always said, he said there were times he had to trudge through the snow to get to the gym. So he said Sean Ray is around in California riding around in the Ferraris, and I'm out here trudging through the snow, and they're going to pay for it. Going up to the very next year, which will be 1992, we had Kevin Levrone, very young, coming into his first Mr. Olympia, taking 2nd place to Dorian Yates. So back-to-back years, we had guys making their pro debut, 1991, 1992, and both of them placing 2nd at the Mr. Olympia. At this time, I'm pretty sure the future for bodybuilding looked very, very bright. Now, Kevin also won the Night of Champions in 1992, similar to how Dorian Yates did, and came in and placed 2nd. Kevin also would place 2nd at the Mr. Olympia to Dorian in 1995, to Ronnie Coleman in 2000 and 2002. A lot of these guys actually tie into my best runner-ups at the Mr. Olympia, but Kevin had an incredible physique. Even though he was never able to capture the title, he did have 23 pro wins. Kevin competed in a ton of competitions. As you guys can see, pretty aesthetic here, man. Kevin is a fan favorite. He was best known for his arms, delts, incredible posing. Kevin definitely one of the greatest of all time. And when we talk uncrowned Mr. Olympias, Kevin is definitely a guy that you have to mention. And I'm pretty sure anytime anyone hits this hand class most muscular, they think of Kevin Levrone. So fast forwarding to the very next year, we had another guy taking 2nd at the Mr. Olympia in Flex Wheeler. So that's 3 years in a row we had guys making their pro debut and taking second. So if you were a fan of bodybuilding at this time, I'm pretty sure you were thinking, who's going to be the next Mr. Olympia. Is it going to be Kevin? Is it going to be Flex? It's incredible how Kevin or Flex were never able to capture the titles, pretty much because in bodybuilding, mass and conditioning prevails over shape. But Flex Wheeler, one of the most genetically gifted athletes of all time, and Flex by far had the best season as a pro, taking 4 pro wins. He won the Arnold Classic, the Ironman, the German Grand Prix, as well as the French Grand Prix, and went into the Mr. Olympia and took second. He will also take second at the Olympia in 98 and 1999 to Ronnie Coleman. Even though Flex was never able to capture the title, he did win 4 Arnold Classics. This picture, one of the most iconic in bodybuilding history. Flex, one of the most genetically gifted and one of the best guys to never ever win that title. When most guys enter the Mr. Olympia competition for the first time, they're honestly just happy to be on that stage. When Phil Heath came into his first Olympia in 2008, he went up against probably the second best version of Dexter Jackson of all time, and Jay Cutler coming out battling with Ronnie Coleman for all of those years. Phil Heath was able to place third in this competition, and as you guys know, he is known as The Gift. He also won the Ironman in the year 2008. Phil Heath is pretty much a lock for the second best bodybuilder of all time. Some people argue him as the best. Phil is definitely the most complete bodybuilder of all time. And even back then, we know Phil ended up having issues with the gut, but even the front double and the front lat spread were actually stronger poses for Phil earlier in his career. Look at this back double bicep. Phil Heath, Dorian Yates, Ronnie Coleman, Samir Banu, Momo Benaziza, some of the best backs we will ever see. Hope you guys know who all of those guys are. Look at the arms, the chest. Phil Heath, 3D bubbly. Man, I wish I was around from the sport when this guy was competing, man. Incredible physique. As always, I hope you guys did indeed enjoy this video. Of all of these debuts, who do you guys think had the best? Probably had to be Flex Wheeler by far, right? I'm Krishan from Go Fitness. That's it. I'm out.